Micro independent brands. It's a phrase that I've been using here on my channel for many years now. They are micro brands that are basically on the cusp of being an independent brand. They have their own brand DNA, and that means that their watches are recognizable. That's really hard for a small brand to do, but these brands achieve it, and they are still affordable. Also, they are high quality. They usually offer quality that is above and beyond what you are normally getting at this price point from other brands that are considered micro brands. So I've made up my own category. I call them micro independent brands. And today we're taking a look at 10 micro independent brands that are amazing. And I'm going to start with number 1. This list is in no order. However, I'm going to start with one of my favorite brands on the list. It's Moles & Co. Recently, they came out with a watch called the 369. It's an integrated bracelet watch with a beautiful bracelet, and it gets on-the-fly micro adjust. This also gets a pretty incredible design. It sort of reminds me of a Laurent Ferrier just a little bit. These are powered by a Sellita SW200, and you're getting 200 meters of water resistance with a display case back. These are pretty incredible for the price, and I have to say, probably one of the best integrated bracelet watches that is very out of the ordinary. It doesn't look like a Gerald Genta design. It looks like its own design, something special, something interesting, and you want something that's affordable. This watch costs just over $1,000. It's around $1,150. Check out Moles & Co. The next watch on this list is from a brand that was recently revived. They are called Traumatic, and they came out in the 1950s. They were making watches in the 1950s, and it's not very typical for a micro brand to actually have a reissue of an original design. However, they revived the brand. They are a micro brand, technically, I guess, a micro independent brand, because what they've come out with is a reissue of one of their own designs, and it's really a beautiful watch. This is a cross between a dress watch and maybe a field watch. You're getting a beautiful case that is very, very well finished and also very thin, under 9 millimeters thick. You're also getting a Sellita SW200, and you're getting all of this for under $1,000. It's a beautiful design. The one that I have has a black dial with gold indices, and it just exudes quality. It just feels like a really nicely made watch in your hand. It kind of reminds me of a JLC on the cheap, but it has its own design DNA. These watches are great, and they actually have a history. Definitely check out Traumatic if you're looking for something that's a little bit dressy, really well made, and has a little bit of a history too. The next brand on this list is a brand that is inspired by Transylvania and Dracula. If you look at their logo, it's actually two fangs from Dracula, and they are actually located in Transylvania, so that's why they're taking inspiration from that region and from the stories in that region. That being said, they do have some amazing watches, and their designs are pretty much their own. They've been around for a little while, and they've been making some pretty high quality, independent, micro independent dive watches. All of their watches basically get 200 meters of water resistance, and they are powered either by an ETA or Sellita movement. Recently, they've been using Sellita movements. The one that I have hands-on, this one gets a split bezel. So there's a 60-minute counter and a 12-hour counter, but that's not what makes these special. The quality here, the quality of these watches is exceptional, and they are just a little bit different from everything else that you see. Their design is very monochromatic. They only make watches with black dials. So far, I have never seen one of their watches without a black or a very dark black gray dial, something like that. They call them green or other colors, but they end up looking like a black anyway. That's not a bad thing. I really like this design. I really like what they're doing, and I think the story behind their watches are kind of cool as well. These are great looking and very, very well made. Again, another micro independent brand that's offering something different at a really good price. These come in, again, under $1,000. Speaking of watches that cost under $1,000, I have to talk about Pollen here because they make some very high quality watches that are very stylish as well. under $1,000. Some of their watches are well under $1,000. Some of them are right around that $1,000 price point. The one that I'm talking about is powered by a La Joux movement. It's their Model, and the yellow dial variant is the one that I actually own. These dials are actually made by Anordain. If you're not familiar with Anordain, they make some pretty incredible dials for their own brand, which is a little bit more upmarket. These cost under $1,000 or around $1,000 depending on the movement that you're getting. These get two-piece cases that are actually screwed together. The inner portion is darkened, the outer portion is brushed and stainless steel. These are really cool, and they are very, very underrated, and their price is incredible. These are definitely recognizable as well. When you see one of these on someone's wrist and you know about the brand, you'll immediately know that these are Apollon, and that is a very good thing. Beautiful watches for a great price. The next brand on this list is Space One, a brand that is inspired by space. Their first watch was a little spaceship that sits on your wrist. It has a little tiny display. It's actually the cockpit of the spaceship where the time is displayed. It's an automatic watch powered by either a Sellita movement or a Landerdin movement. I believe they use different movements for their watches. They're made out of pretty cool materials. Some of them are made out of heat-treated titanium. Some of them look like they've entered the atmosphere, which look amazing. They make carbon fiber versions, just plain old titanium versions. They're really awesome. They're really not that complicated, but they look really cool on your wrist. Definitely conversation starters. They're also making a watch that has the Earth, Moon, and the Sun in it, and all of them actually rotate. I actually bought that watch, so I will be having that watch hands-on for review here on my channel. So I'm very excited to actually receive that watch. Hopefully I receive that watch pretty soon. Those watches cost a little bit more. So the spaceship watch costs around $1,500 depending on the one that you get. And the Earth, Moon, and Sun watch, their Tellurium, I think it's called, is around $3,000 or just under $3,000. A really cool watch that isn't a lot of money considering what you're actually getting. The technology here is really hard to do, and it doesn't look like anything else on the market. In fact, I think the only other watch that's close to this is a watch that's made by Ulysse Nardin, and that cost around $80,000. So obviously, this is a micro independent watch brand that is doing something really incredible at an affordable price. The next watch on this list is a tank watch. It's from Eco Nutra, and it is their Riva Nera. This is a watch that they just recently released. It's in grade 5 titanium. It's a beautiful 27 millimeter grade 5 titanium case, and you're getting a hand wound ETA 7001 inside. But this doesn't look like your typical snobby, boring tank watch. This is something a little bit different. It definitely gets some Art Deco vibes. However, it's something completely different, something that I did not expect from the brand, and I think that they made something really cool here, and it's also pretty affordable, around $1,500 for something that's very different in grade 5 titanium with a hand-wound ETA 7001, which is finished really nicely as well. I think that's an excellent price, and they make some very interesting watches. And again, that brand DNA is strong within Eco Nutra. All of their watches look like they belong in the same family. Even if it's a tank versus a dive watch, you know that they belong to Eco Nutra. The next brand here is maybe not a micro brand, and maybe not an independent brand, because technically they are owned by a larger brand. They are called Beta. They are owned by a brand located in Qatar. That brand owns a bunch of different luxury brands. So they are a luxury conglomerate. However, they don't make watches. Those other brands don't make watches. This is the only brand that makes watches, and they actually wanted to start making watches, so they created this brand Beta, B-E-D-A. And the watches that they've been making are pretty damn cool. One of them looks like a jump hour, but it's actually just a super simple concept. It's just a window. It's like a dial plate that sits on top of the case, basically. So where you would have a sapphire crystal, you have a dial plate that has some graining on it. Then there is a sapphire crystal that goes around that plate. There's a window. That's it. And basically that's where you tell the time. There's 2 discs in there. One is hours, one in minutes. That's really it. Very, very simple, but a very cool execution of a watch. Then they have some other really odd shaped watches that they're making. kind of remind me of something that maybe Gerald Genta would have made. Very cool, really good looking watches. And I've seen these hands-on. They are actually really very well made. So I'm surprised that some of the prices on these, they cost under $2,000. Some of them cost under $1,000. They're mostly powered by ETA movements. So obviously these aren't high-end watches, but they are really cool micro independent watches. The next brand on this list is a brand that I actually have some history with. I loved their watches when they first came out, and I didn't buy one because I was a little bit skeptical about the design. They're called La Venture, and I know a lot of people out there know exactly the watches that I'm talking about. They're sort of a cross between a Nautilus and maybe a Submariner. That's how I would describe them. They're integrated bracelet watches that are really well made. They recently came out with their own in-house movement. They make watches with Sellita movements as well. They have a business model that is very different from other Swiss manufacturers. All of their watches are 100% Swiss made. So there are brands out there that do this, and it does increase the price of their watches dramatically because essentially what they're doing is making watches with components that are sourced in Switzerland. In some cases, some watches like Maran Musi, which is a independent brand that's a little bit more expensive, well, really a lot more expensive, they source all of their components within 60 miles of their office. So this is a very similar brand. So their watches actually do sell for a lot more money on the secondary market. And originally when they came out, they didn't sell all that well. And then people caught on, and now they're selling for a lot more money than they used to. And they also have made their own in-house movement, which is pretty cool as well. I would actually love to own one of these. It was one of the first micro brands that I was really interested in buying, and I ended up not buying. And that was back in 2009. I actually sent them an email about one of their watches, and I ended up not buying it. It was when they first started making watches, and for one reason or other, I decided not to buy one back then. And I had contemplated it over years, but never ended up buying one. This list would not be complete if I did not mention the next two brands on this list. Formex, one of the best micro independent watch brands out there. They were the first to put micro adjust in butterfly clasp. They were also one of the first to integrate a suspension system into their cases. This is something that they've been doing for a very long time. Other brands have done similar efforts to make something like this. However, no one has done a good job like Formex has, and it makes their watches very, very comfortable because they actually flex a little bit with your wrist. Now, most of their watches actually have this technology. Some of them don't, but the ones that do are pretty damn awesome. I think that the Essence does. I don't think their dive watches do, and that's for obviously diving reasons and water resistance reasons, but all of their watches are really high quality, really well made, and very recognizable because their designs are their own. Also, I do want to mention that they have a parent company, Dexel. They make components for other watch brands, and those brands are brands like Girard-Perregaux and Montblanc, very high-end manufacturers. In fact, Montblanc use the exact same micro adjust that they use on their straps. So they have a deployment buckle that has built-in micro adjust. So do Montblanc, and they actually purchased that directly from Dexel, which is basically Formex because Dexel make Formex watches. So amazing that you're getting that sort of quality, that level of quality in a watch that costs under $2,000. All of their watches cost in that $2,000 range. You could definitely get some more expensive ones from them, but their watches start at around $1,500. So very good prices for excellent watches. The next brand on this list is obviously Christopher Ward. You cannot make a list like this without including Christopher Ward. They definitely are a micro independent brand. They might be on their way to being an independent brand or maybe even a major brand at this point because they are making so many amazing watches and so many people love them. I included. I love Christopher Ward. I own a Belcanto, the 12X, and a few others. They don't only make really well-made watches, they also make very creative watches. They're constantly thinking about the next step and the next thing that they can do to improve their quality, improve what they're actually offering. Think about the fact that they came out with a chiming watch that nobody else was doing at a price point that nobody else could do it for. Also, just look at the watch. These are watches that high-end collectors want to own because they look amazing. The same thing goes for the 12X with the SH21, their in-house movement. These are beautiful watches with, I believe, 5 days power reserves. I should know that because I own the watch, but they are incredible. They're beautiful. And you definitely need to own a Christopher Ward in your collection. It doesn't matter if you like high-end watches or affordable watches or whatever you collect, Christopher Ward has a watch for you, and you definitely need to check them out because they're pretty awesome. That's really it, guys. That's my list. Tell me if there's anything that I missed on this list that you think I should include down in the comment section below. I'll add a link to all of the brands that I spoke about in this video in the description. If you are interested, definitely check them out. Anyway, guys, thank you for logging on. Thank you for watching this video. And that's really it. I'll catch you guys in the next video.